I went to a bar with a couple of friends one Saturday night. The night started off pretty normal, drinks, laughs, and mingling with different people around the bar. But as the night went on, I found myself feeling more and more out of place. The bar scene just wasn't doing it for me that night, and I couldn't shake off the bad mood that seemed to cling to me. Eventually, I decided to call it a night and head home. I pulled out my phone and called for an Uber to take me home, which was about 15 minutes away. When the Uber supposedly arrived, it wasn't what I expected. Instead of the typical Uber car, an old beat-up 2003 Honda Accord pulled up in front of the bar. The car looked like it had seen better days, with faded paint and a dented bumper. I hesitated for a second, but the driver rolled down his window, and I asked if he was Mike, the name given by the app. He nodded, so I got in, choosing the passenger seat because the back seat was cluttered with books, fast food wrappers, and other random junk. The driver didn't strike me as the talkative type. He was on the older side, not too old, but his thinning hair and stern expression made him seem unapproachable. His eyes were hollow, and his face was set in a permanent scowl, as if he was perpetually annoyed with the world. So I kept to myself, not feeling like making small talk anyway. I was pretty drunk, texting people and mindlessly scrolling through my phone, barely aware of what I was doing. The dim light from my phone screen was the only thing I focused on as the car sped through the dark streets. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning and realizing my phone was missing. Panic set in as I tore my room apart, searching every corner, under the bed, in the bathroom, even retracing my steps from the night before. But the phone was nowhere to be found. I felt a growing sense of dread as the realization sank in. I must have lost it in the Uber. Finally, after hours of searching, I had to face the fact that my phone was gone. I had my brother text all my friends, hoping one of them had found it, but no one had seen it. Then I remembered I had recently activated the Find My iPhone feature. I quickly asked my brother to help me track it down, my heart racing with anticipation. Sure enough, my iPhone showed up on the map. It was a few miles away, in a rough part of town that everyone knew to avoid. The kind of place where you roll up your windows and lock your doors, even in broad daylight. My brother agreed to come with me, not just to help track the phone, but also to have my back in case something went wrong. As we drove through the narrow, dimly lit streets of that part of town, I couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in my stomach. The houses were old and dilapidated, some with broken windows, others with overgrown yards. The occasional flicker of a streetlight cast eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. We finally pulled up to a small, worn-down house in the area where the phone was supposedly located. It was a boxy little place with two small windows in the front and one on the upper level. The paint was peeling, and the roof looked like it was about to cave in. It was around 8 or 9 p.m., still early enough that we decided to approach the house and ring the doorbell. The doorbell didn't seem to work, so I knocked hard on the door. The sound of my knocking echoed in the still night air, but there was no immediate response. We waited, and then finally heard footsteps creaking on the old wooden floor inside. The footsteps grew louder, then suddenly stopped. There was a peephole in the door, and I had a strong feeling someone was watching us through it, sizing us up. After an awkwardly long silence, the door cracked open just a bit, and a raspy, almost familiar voice asked who it was. I explained the situation about the lost iPhone, but the person inside played dumb at first, acting like he had no idea what I was talking about. Then I noticed the old Honda Accord in the driveway, and everything clicked. I called him out, saying he must have been my Uber driver and that I must have dropped my phone in his car. At this point, he opened the door fully, revealing himself to indeed be the Uber driver from the night before. He suddenly acted like he remembered everything, but his behavior was unsettling. He seemed socially awkward, almost as if he didn't know how to interact with people properly. His eyes darted around nervously and his hands fidgeted as he spoke. He invited us in and shut the door behind us, saying he would go upstairs to find the phone. As creepy as the guy was, I felt a bit relieved, thinking I would finally get my phone back. My brother and I stood awkwardly in the narrow hallway of the old house. The place was straight out of another era, with floral wallpaper that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1930s. The air inside was stale, filled with the musty scent of old furniture and dust. The dim light from a single bulb hanging from the ceiling cast long shadows on the worn carpet, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The stairs creaked under the man's weight as he went upstairs, every step sounding like it might be his last. We heard him moving around upstairs for a while, the creaking floorboards following his every step. But then he stopped directly above us. My brother and I exchanged uneasy glances as we waited, but after 10 minutes, we were getting impatient. The house was deathly silent, except for the occasional creak from above. We called up the stairs, asking if he needed help, but all we heard was a slight creak in the floor above us. My brother suggested I go upstairs to see if he needed assistance. I reluctantly agreed, feeling uneasy as I climbed the dark, narrow staircase. The air grew colder as I ascended, and my heart pounded in my chest. At the top, there were 3 open doors, one leading to a bathroom, the other 2 to bedrooms. The only light came from a dim hallway nightlight, casting a faint glow that barely illuminated the darkened rooms. I called out for the man again, but there was no response. As I moved past the bathroom, something caught my eye through the crack in the door. It was the man, hiding behind the door, holding something in his hand. My heart skipped a beat. I felt like he was staring right at me, but I didn't look for more than a second. I knew I had to get out of there. I calmly called down to my brother, saying I'd be right back, and then walked as quickly as I could back to the stairs. As soon as I reached them, I bolted down, screaming for my brother to follow. He emerged from one of the other rooms downstairs, where he'd been snooping around, and without asking any questions, we both ran out of the house to the car. As we drove down the block, my heart was still racing. I explained everything to my brother, and the more I talked, the more the reality of what could have happened began to sink in. We decided to call the police. An officer arrived, and we returned to the house, showing the officer the Find My iPhone app. When the officer knocked on the door, the man answered again, and this time, the officer demanded he retrieve the phone. The man complied, going upstairs and returning with my phone in less than 10 seconds. My brother and I begged the officer to arrest him, explaining how he had been hiding behind the door with something in his hand, clearly intending to harm me, but the officer said there was nothing he could do. As we left, the man gave me the most disgusting, evil stare I had ever seen. His eyes were filled with a cold, calculating malice that sent chills down my spine. I flipped him off as we walked away, which felt good, but I still shudder when I think about what could have happened if I had noticed him hiding behind that door. The image of him lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike, still haunts me to this day. Before I upgraded to an iPhone X, I had an iPhone 7 that I was perfectly content with. It was reliable, never had a scratch, and served me well. But all that changed one day when I lost it. I still don't remember how or where it happened, but I do remember the sinking feeling in my stomach when I realized it was gone. I came home one afternoon and quickly realized my phone wasn't with me. I tore through the house, checked my car, even retraced my steps, but there was no sign of it. Panic started to set in as I drove back to all the places I had been that day, hoping to find it lying somewhere, but it was nowhere to be found. Then I remembered that I had enabled the Find My iPhone feature. I rushed back home, logged into my iCloud account from my laptop, and tracked my phone. To my surprise, it was showing up in a wooded area at the edge of the village, a place I had no reason to be. None of my siblings were home, and my dad was busy preparing for an early start at work the next day. He wasn't thrilled about the idea of me going alone, but he let me take his phone to track mine. So I headed out, flashlight in hand, ready to retrieve my phone. The drive to the woods was short, but as I approached the area, a sense of unease settled over me. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches intertwining to create a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. I parked on the grass at the side of the road and looked at the map. According to the app, my phone was only a short walk away, just north of my position. But as I stood there, staring into the dark woods, the idea of going in seemed a lot less appealing. The whole situation felt off. Why would someone with my phone be in the middle of the woods at 10 p.m.? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious it seemed. But I was already there, and the thought of leaving without my phone didn't sit well with me. I reluctantly followed the trail into the woods, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. My flashlight was weak, barely lighting up the path 5 feet in front of me. Shadows danced around me as I walked, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I reached the location indicated by the app, I stopped and did a full 360, scanning the darkness around me. There was nothing but trees and shadows. I called out, hoping someone would respond, but my voice sounded weak and unconvincing in the still night air. Then I heard it, a whispering sound coming from beyond a few trees in the direction my phone was supposed to be. The sound was faint, barely audible, but it sent a chill down my spine. I called out again, but this time, there was only silence. I decided to send a text from my dad's phone to mine, and seconds later, I heard the familiar ding of my iPhone. The sound was coming from the same direction as the whispering. I looked toward the sound and saw a faint glow, a phone screen lighting up the silhouettes of two, maybe three men standing behind a line of trees. My heart raced as the realization hit me. I was in way over my head. There was no way my phone was worth the risk. I turned off the flashlight and bolted back down the trail as fast as I could, not stopping until I reached my car. My breath came in ragged gasps as I fumbled for the keys, finally unlocking the door and jumping inside. I locked the doors and sat there for a moment, trying to calm my racing heart. By the time I got back, my phone was no longer showing up on the Find My iPhone app. It had either been turned off, disconnected, or destroyed. I've checked the app a few times since then, hoping the phone would reappear on the map, but it never has. Looking back, I know I made the right choice running away. No possession is worth risking your life over, especially not in a situation like that. The thought of what could have happened if I had approached those men in the woods still haunts me, and I've learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of blindly following technology into the unknown. I recently lost my iPhone 5C, a really old model, the one that had served me well for years. I was due for an upgrade anyway, but the way I lost it is a story I won't forget anytime soon. It was a weekend night, and I had been out drinking with friends. At some point during the night, I lost track of my phone. It wasn't until we had sobered up a bit that I realized it was gone. Panicking, I asked one of my friends if I could use their phone to track mine using the Find My iPhone feature. Luckily, my phone wasn't far away, only about a mile from where we were. But that meant someone had taken it. My friend Ryan and I decided to go after it, and the app led us to an abandoned warehouse building on the outskirts of town. Of course, it had to be an abandoned building. We found a way inside, using only Ryan's phone flashlight to guide us. The place was cold, filled with trash and rubble, and every little sound echoed eerily through the empty space. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and the walls were covered in graffiti. As we made our way upstairs, we heard voices, two people yelling at each other, their words unintelligible but filled with anger. We figured one of them must have my phone, so we cautiously made our way toward the sound. The hallway we entered was disturbingly silent, the kind of silence that makes your heart race. The only sound was a sudden bang coming from a nearby locker room. Ryan and I tried to make our presence known, not wanting to surprise anyone who might be dangerous. We entered the locker room, but it was empty. Desperate, Ryan started checking the lockers, making a lot of noise as he did. The metallic clanging of the lockers echoed through the empty building, adding to the tension. That's when we heard a deep voice from another room, calling us over and saying they had what we were looking for. I was about to walk into the adjacent room, but Ryan stopped me, putting a hand on my shoulder and motioning for me to stay quiet. He was doing something on his phone, and then I heard it, my ringtone, coming from one of the lockers. There were too many lockers to quickly figure out which one it was. The sound seemed to be coming from several directions at once, bouncing off the walls and creating an eerie chorus of my ringtone. I started checking the ones where the sound seemed to be coming from, but Ryan suddenly pulled me back and insisted we leave. I wanted to get my phone, but he kept saying no, urging me to follow him out. By the time we got to the car, we had a long conversation about what had just happened. Ryan was convinced we had been walking straight into a trap. He had spotted someone's head peeking out from behind a wall in the adjacent room, barely visible but clearly watching us. Whoever it was had questionable intentions. In the end, losing that old iPhone wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. It was much better to leave with our wallets and our lives intact. As we drove away from that abandoned building, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something terrible. The image of that shadowy figure lurking in the darkness, waiting to pounce, still haunts me to this day. Looking back, I realize how foolish it was to go into that building alone, armed with nothing but a weak flashlight and a sense of false bravado. But at the time, all I could think about was getting my phone back. Now I know better. Some things just aren't worth the risk, and no piece of technology is worth putting your life on the line. If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads.